Hello everyone! Welcome to today's Read for Pixels Google Hangout session for the Pixel project. My name is Anusha Kandasivam. We have a great session for you today. Today we have this Alyson Noel. She is a New York Times best-selling author of the Immortal series, the Soul Seeker series, the Riley Boom series, and numerous other novels. Hello Alyson, welcome!
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope we have a great session. I'm sure we will. Okay, so before we start, I have to tell you a little bit about the Pixel project and the Read for Pixels campaign. Through this campaign, we are collaborating with 11 award-winning and best-selling authors such as Alyson to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for our celebrity male role model Pixel Reveal campaign, which aims to raise about $1 million. This $1 million will be shared between the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Pixel Project so that we can keep up our efforts to end violence against women. Read for Pixels is a great campaign. We have lots of exclusive author goodies to give away, which I will be telling you about a bit later in the session, and I will also tell you how you can help us and donate. And to find out more about it, you can go to reveal.thepixel.net. Okay, so on with it. Alyson will do a reading from one of her books, and then we will have a little discussion about strong women characters, the importance of female characters in storytelling, and then we'll have a Q&A session with the audience. There are two ways you can ask Alyson questions. The first is if you are watching on Google Hangouts, you will see a Q&A box open on the right-hand side of your screen. You can just type in the questions there. The second is if you are watching on YouTube, you can actually type the questions in the comment section, but you have to be logged on to Google to do this. All right, so Alyson, are you ready?
I am.
All right, shall I give a little introduction of the little section you're reading, or do you want to do that?
No, go for it.
Okay. Alyson will be reading an extract from the novel Fated, which is the first one in her Soul Seeker series. If I'm not mistaken, this is where the protagonist, a young girl called Dare, meets her grandmother for the first time. All right, go for it, Alyson.
All right. So, reading.
Cool glasses.
Reading glasses, yes. So this is from chapter 9. I wake with a scream, lying face down, my mouth mashed into a pillow in a way that muffles the sound. Still, I can't help but worry that Paloma might have heard, might decide to come check on me and make sure I'm okay. I kick the tangle of blankets and sheets from my legs and push them to the foot of my bed. Hauling myself up against a short wooden headboard, I cock my ear toward the hall, alert to any sign of my grandmother, convinced it's just a matter of time before she bursts into the room, bearing some strange herbal brew she'll force me to drink. But all I make out is a comforting noise of kitchen sounds sinking under the door, water running, butter sizzling, along with a soft sucking sigh of a refrigerator door opening and the firm, no-nonsense thump when it closes again. The everyday domestic soundtrack most people take for granted that I only know from watching TV and movies. For the past 16 years, Jenica and I have been on the road, which means that most of my meals have come from airplanes, restaurants, foreign cafes with questionable health codes. And when I'm lucky, the huge catered spreads they serve on the set. The only time I've come even remotely close to experiencing anything resembling normal domesticity was when we found ourselves staying at Harlan's on my 12th birthday, and Jenica tried to surprise us by making French toast. Only she got distracted while waiting for the edges to brown, and the next thing we knew, the toast was smoking, the fire alarm screaming, and after the drama was handled, Harlan squeezed us all into his car and treated us to brunch at some vegan place near Malibu Beach. But Paloma's nothing like Jenica. From what I can see, she's a living picture of old-world Latina hospitality. Though as much as my rumbling stomach urges me to get out of bed and go join her, the rest of me is determined to hold off, to delay the moment just a little bit longer. I push a clump of damp, sweaty hair from my face and waste no time exchanging the clothes I slept in for the soft cotton robe Paloma draped over a chair. The horror of the nightmare is so fresh in my mind that for the first time ever, I fervently hope I never dream about that boy again. I curl my toes into the soft sheepskin that hugs the floor by my bed and put myself through a series of stretches, working to release the crook in my neck that always comes from sleeping in the face plant position, before moving about my new room, exploring it in a way I didn't get to last night, since whatever Paloma gave me knocked me out good and fast. There's an old wooden desk and matching chair by the window with my father's initials carved into the grain in the upper right corner. The DS, so hard-edged and angular, it looks almost Greek. And though I try to picture him sitting there, talking on the phone, doing homework, even plotting his eventual escape to LA, it's no use. It's impossible to make the transition from a smiling black and white photo to a real flesh and blood person. Paloma's only child who felt so suffocated right here in this town, right here in this house, he couldn't wait to get away. Even when I spot his framed photo on the dresser, it's still hard to place. But despite his neat appearance, the photo definitely hints at his unhappiness. His shirt is clean and pressed, his hair is freshly trimmed, and while his smile is pleasant enough, if you look closely, you can see more than a hint of restlessness in his gaze. And I can't help but wonder if Paloma was aware of it too. Or she's just like every other parent, allowing her eyes to skip past all the things that are too unpleasant to see. He was 16 in that photo. Paloma pokes her head around the now open door, her voice so unexpected I can't help but jump in response. Same age as you, she adds, but all I can do is stare. Hand clutched to my chest, aware of my heart pumping madly against it, the other returning the photo, feeling oddly guilty for studying it. I heard you get up. She moves toward me, lifts the photo from my fingers, and holds it in hers. I don't say a word. I'm not sure what to say. I'm pretty sure my muffled scream hadn't carried all the way to the kitchen. So does that mean she was camped outside my door, just waiting for the moment to barge in? Oh, I suppose I didn't hear so much as sense you, she smiles, glancing between the photo and me. He left not long after this picture was taken. He called on occasion, sent a few postcards, but once he was gone, I never saw him again. She places a photo, taking great care to set it precisely where I'd found it, before moving toward the window where she pushes the soft curtains aside, allowing a single slant of pale light to stream in. Her gaze following mine when she says, "It's a dream catcher." I reach toward the delicate weaving hanging just over the sill. It's round, webbed center, woven with yarn and beads, with a deliberate hole left smack in its center, while soft buckskin fringe and an array of light feathers dangle from the ends. You know the story of the dream catcher, she asked, her flashing dark eyes reminding me of the color of earth after a night of hard rain. I shake my head and scratch my arm, even though it doesn't really itch, a nervous habit that's been with me for years. My own horrible dream lurking just under the surface, leaving me to wonder if I should maybe confide in her, an impulsive idea I'm quick to dismiss. Like people, each one is different, and yet they share common traits. This particular dream catcher is Navajo in origin, made by a friend. It is said that dreams come from someplace outside ourselves, and so the dream catcher is hung over the bed or the window, acting as a web that catches the good dreams that ease us through the day, while allowing the bad dreams to pass through the hole you see in the center, so that it can be burned up by the rays of the sun. And those feathers at the bottom, emotion source of feathers I've been flicking with my fingers without even realizing it. They're meant to symbolize the breath of all living things. She turns to me, her gaze lightly probing as though she's waiting for me to reveal something big. And though I'm tempted to tell her that the dream catcher doesn't work, well, it's a nice little piece of handcrafted art. As far as functionality goes, it's a total fail. It doesn't work worth a crap at keeping the bad dreams away. Her eyes are too kind, too hopeful. So I swallow the words and follow her into the kitchen for breakfast instead. You know there's a rock jutting out of the wall, right? I drain my juice and carry the glass to the sink where Paloma stands elbow deep in suds, since there's no sign of a dishwasher from what I can see. Not meaning for the words to sound as abrupt and rude as they did, though I do find it strange that we just got through an entire brunch. Little did I realize, but I'd slept well past breakfast, and even past lunch, including a huge heaping plate of delicious blue corn pancakes topped with more maple syrup, a side of assorted organic berries plucked straight from her garden, fresh squeezed juice, and a nice warm mug of premium coffee so aromatic I can still smell traces of it clinging to the room, with absolutely no mention of the boulder till I just now brought it up. Paloma's lips curve, rounding a small smile as she says, "We should not disturb nature. We should never demand it conform to our ways. Rather, we must live to live in harmony with it, for it offers many gifts." Oh boy, I've heard that sort of talk before. usually coming from some crazy-eyed starlet who just returned from a life-changing yoga session. The newfound enlightenment lasting a few weeks at most until the next craze hit and the starlet moved on. The Paloma's no starlet. Though I've no doubt she could have been back in the day. If my math is correct, she's got to be somewhere in her early 50s, so she's still really pretty in a no-fuss, organic sort of way with her long dark braid that trails to her waist, clear brown eyes, tiny frame, thin cotton shift dress that reminds me an awful lot of the one I wore in my dream, and bare feet. I had traced my fingers over the rock, amazed by the way it just butts right into the room, solid, consistent, demanding everything else find a way to exist around it. The house looks different this morning, and not just because of the rock I failed to notice before. Last night the house seemed so warm and glowy with the fireplace blazing and the assortment of table lamps lit, and now it seems simple, almost plain, bearing a handful of Navajo rugs, simple wood furniture, jam jars crammed with small clusters of yellow and purple wildflowers, and these odd little nooks that punctuate the walls, each of them filled with hand-rendered carvings of various saints. Still, as monastic as it is, it offers an undeniable sense of comfort I can't quite place, though that might have something to do with its size. It's small, cozy, impossible to get lost in, consisting of this big open space that hosts a kitchen and den, 2 bedrooms, one for me, one for Paloma, and another room at the far end that's clearly a recent addition. The short brick ramp that leads up to it, ending in an arched doorway that frames an entire wall, with shelves filled with bunches of drying herbs, jars filled with weird-looking liquids, and all kinds of other miscellaneous stuff, for lack of a better word. What's that? I motioned toward the strange room. That's where I work with my clients. Think of it as my office. Paloma pulls the stopper from the sink, allowing the water to gurgle down the drain as she dries her hands in a blue embroidered towel. But not to worry. I've cleared the day to spend with you so that we can talk and get to know each other better without interruption. I glanced between the room and her, saying, well, maybe we start in there. After all, I'm the crazy one who was sent here to be cured. She gives me a look I can't read. Is it compassion, sadness, regret? It's impossible to tell. You are not crazy. She leans against a counter crafted from colorful Spanish tiles, her head cocked and steady. And I'm afraid there is nothing I can do to cure you, as you say. My eyes bug as her words repeat in my head, my reply just shy of hysteria. Then why am I here? Why'd I travel all this way if you can't help me? What's the point of all this? Why'd you take me away from Jenica? You've misread my words. She pushes away from the kitchen and motions for me to join her in the den, where she stokes the vertically stacked logs in the fireplace, causing them to spark and spit, before she moves to the couch and lowers herself onto the cushions. I didn't say I can't help you. I said I can't cure you. There is nothing to be cured, dear. I glare, fidget, pull hard on my robe, yanking it so tight it practically wraps twice around me, perching on the arm of a chair, having no idea what she's getting at. It all sounds suspicious, like some kind of devil's speak. I'm this close to calling Jenica. Demand she fly here right now and come get me. When Paloma says, it happened to your father as well. The onset is always around the 16th year. I heave a deep sigh, shake my head. So I am psycho. Great. And according to you, I got it from my dad. My teeth grind as I twist my sash so hard I hear the fabric give way. This is great, just great. I travel all the way only to receive the same diagnosis I got in Morocco and L.A. No. Paloma's voice is as stern as her face. You are not crazy. It may feel like crazy, even look like crazy, but it's anything but. What you're experiencing is the onset of your biological inheritance, the family legacy that's been passed down through each generation, always to the firstborn. I shake my head, peer at her again. Her mouth is still moving, desperate to explain, but it's too much to take in, too weird to comprehend. My head so muddled with the sound of her voice, her nonsensical words. The best I can manage is, so why keep having kids if you know all of this? Seriously, you have no idea what it's like. Why would Django take the risk? Why wouldn't he use protection or warn Jenica at the very least? Because Django was as young and idealistic and stubborn as any other 16-year-old. He refused to believe, refused to acknowledge my warnings. He thought that by running away he could outrun the visions, outrun what I told him. But as you've already seen, there is no escape. The visions found you all the way on the other side of the world, and if you try to run, they will find you again. I'm told the symptoms appeared in full force in Marrakesh, though I'm sure you experienced signs long before then. My stomach twists, melons shrivel and shrink, forcing me to fight for each shallow breath as my eyes cast about wildly, urging me to flee. I couldn't reach Django. I failed to reach my one and only son, failed to convince him of his duty, his responsibility, his destiny. But Dare, I will not fail with you. I know exactly what you're going through. Yes, the visions are different for each of us, but the message stays true. You need to heed the call before it's too late. Her short, unvarnished nails pluck at the hem of her dress. And while I'm sorry for your current state of suffering and confusion, I can promise you that it won't always be this way. With the right guidance, the right diet, the right training, you will surpass all of that and realize your destiny, your birthright, the role you were born for. I blink, Dare, blink again, aware of myself saying, what? As I shake my head and shoot her a beltful look. Do you have any idea how crazy this sounds? I do, she nods. My own reaction was similar, I assure you, but you must work past your prejudice. You must look beyond the ideas you've been conditioned to believe. There is too much at stake. This town holds secrets you cannot begin to imagine. It is full of coyotes, and Coyote is a trickster you must learn to outsmart. Her gaze levels on mine, letting me know she means business. She will not mince words. If you fail to learn, if you fail to accept what you were born to do, I'm afraid I can't save you. No one can. If you continue to fight your calling, it's just a matter of time before your fate will become that of your father's. And Dare, sweet Nieta, I can't let that happen. I won't lose you, and I won't let them win until you've made peace with what you must do, until you fully understand what's ahead of you, what's being asked of you. The only safe place for you is right here in this house. My property is protected. You have nothing to fear as long as you're here. It'll be weeks until you've learned enough to leave. I balk, my expression incredulous. Her words are ridiculous. No way is she holding me prisoner. No way will I listen to another crazy word. Before she can stop me, I bolt from the room and race down the hall, her voice chasing me behind me until it's blocked by the slam of my door. And thus Dare runs out on her abuela.
That was great, Alyson. There's a really great juxtaposition between the two characters. Dare is the really young and vulnerable, confused girl, and Paloma seems to be this really wise woman. Did you purposely write them like that?
I did. You know, Dare's abuela is modeled after my own abuela. I'm half Hispanic, and from my father's side, and so my grandmother on my father's side, I unfortunately only met once in my life. And she lived in New York, I lived in California, and she didn't speak any English, and unfortunately I didn't speak any Spanish. And I think I was around 15 at the time when I first met her, so I was close to Dare's age. And I just remember her as being this just beautiful person inside and out. She had such a lovely spirit and way about her. And the relationship that I gave Dare with her abuela is sort of wish fulfillment on my part. I sort of wish that I had, you know, a longer and better relationship with my abuela. I know that she had many things that she could have taught me, and so I sort of lived that experience that I didn't have through Dare's experience with her abuela, which she rejects in the beginning because her sort of old world ideas sound completely insane. And Dare is a very modern girl living in this moment, and so, you know, she's sort of driven by this fear of what she is going to face as she stays with this crazy old lady.
So you did purposely write Paloma as a sort of role model figure for this young girl. Do you think it's important for young people like Dare to have these kinds of strong women in their life as role models?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a story. You know, it's three generations of women. Really, there's Paloma the grandmother. There's Mother Jenica, who is a little flighty and unsettled, and sometimes Dare actually feels like the adult in the relationship because back there when she was quite young, there's not a vast age difference between them, and you know, she's driven by her own needs and fears, and so they all sort of play off each other. They all have something to teach each other, and they all learn from each other. But I really wanted sort of a strong matriarchal figure to sort of guide both Jenica and Dare, and so I created that in the character form.
Oh, that's great. What do you think that men can be good role models for girls as well, and for boys, of course?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of men that are wonderful role models. You know, my brother-in-law has 5 daughters. He is a terrific father. He's a great role model. He's totally there for them, and there is nothing that they, you know, can't share with him. and it's just this really beautiful relationship. And so I've seen it firsthand, and it's a beautiful thing.
Great. Speaking of men and boys, most of the protagonists in your novels are usually young women, and right. But there are young men who read these kind of fantasy novels. Do you think it's important that they have some character in the story that they can identify with, a man or a woman who treats women with respect, and so they can sort of learn from that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, in the case of the Soul Seekers novel, the male protagonist, Dace, as the series continues, ends up getting a much bigger role, and we get to, and then it becomes a shifting perspective where you're reading from Dare's perspective and from Dace's perspective. And he has a really interesting journey ahead of him. And he was the product of a rape, basically. And so, you know, and he has this really beautiful relationship with his mother that is filled with respect, knowing what she went through. And she conceived him in her unyielding love for him regardless of it. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that I wanted to explore in the book as well.
Okay. As an author, as a storyteller, do you deliberately set out to create female characters that can be considered to be strong?
Yeah, for sure, but I like to do it in different ways. I'm not always a fan of the character who comes out kicking ass from the beginning.
Some people feel that a strong character is one that can kick butt, but actually that's not really true.
I don't really see it that way. I mean, to me, that's a great trait, and it's fun to watch. But it's, you know, it's the vulnerable parts to me that make a character interesting. And so I like to generally start with a character that has a lot of vulnerability and fears, and learns from her mistakes, makes mistakes. We all do, and learns from them. I think that's a really important thing to show young readers, that you can survive your mistakes, that it's okay to make them. We all do. And you can survive them, and not just survive them, but thrive because of them. You know, with Dare Santos in the Soul Seekers series, he appears really strong and tough. She kind of has this really real independence about her, and she, you know, knows her mind, and she's just this really strong girl because in a lot of cases she's looked after herself, and you know, sort of taking the parent role sometimes when her mom didn't. But her journey is really learning how to become a little more vulnerable, because it's going to come down to her being able to form a community with people around her in order to succeed at her destiny. And so she sort of enters with these walls built up around her, and she appears strong. But it's not until she's able to break through some of those walls and let other people in that she really experiences true growth. And so I always like to start with the, you know, there's some damage there.
It is a really good lesson, though, that some people think that I'm strong and I don't need any help, but you know, it's not a sign of weakness if you actually do rely on people around you.
We're social creatures. Yeah. We're social creatures, and no man is an island. And it's perfect. I mean, I myself am very independent. It is not very easy for me to ask for help either. You know, the way I was raised, the way I grew up, it's not an easy thing to do. But when I find myself doing it, I'm always really humbled by the response, you know. And there's, you know, it connects us to other people, and it's perfectly okay to fall down sometimes and to reach out and hope somebody's going to pick you up.
Like you said, it's important for women to speak out and ask for help, or do everything themselves. That's fine if they can do it. Most of your readers are young adults, like teenagers. Do you think it is important at that age to learn to be strong and independent and speak your mind, have an opinion, and to have agency, basically? And it's important for storytellers to tell these people that it's okay to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, I think it's a very hard thing to for young girls, you know, in a world gone mad for, you know, the Kardashians and a few years ago Paris Hilton or whatever. It's hard to think that who you are is okay. Who you are is good enough. You're constantly getting messages from the media that everything about you is wrong, and if only you could buy these products and change these things about yourself, you're going to look as good as these people on reality TV or these people in these magazines. And I think it's a really difficult task to be able to stand in your own truth and figure out what that is and feel good about it. And so, all of my books, to some degree, have this message of you are perfectly fine just how you are. You are actually, perfectly perfect just how you are. You don't need to be like anyone else. You're not supposed to be like anyone else. You're born to be the unique thing that you are, and you need to stand in that and honor that. But it's a hard thing to do, especially at that age. I can't say I succeeded at that age, but if we can give them the message that it is perfectly okay to be yourself over and over again at some point, maybe it'll begin to penetrate.
Yeah, I suppose it takes a bit of time when you're young to realize that, and then build up to a point where you're confident enough in yourself that you're just you. Do you think that girls should demand that right to be heard and to be equal?
Absolutely. Girls have every right to demand to be heard and to be equal. They have every right to demand to, live and exist in a safe environment. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're already starting to get questions from the audience, which is great. So I'll start reading them out slowly. We have there are two types of questions. One is some are about violence against women and feminism, and some are about writing. So
Okay.
maybe since we've been talking about girls and all that, I'll just start with one about a question from Regina, actually. And she asks, are you a feminist? And what would you say to young women who are down on feminism despite enjoying the rights that they enjoy, that feminism has fought for? And how about young men who dislike feminists?
Yes, I'm a feminist. Though I will say I look forward to the day when I no longer have to proclaim that, when it just is. I really do. I look forward to a day when we don't have to address ourselves with these labels, that it just is that we are equal, and we can't perceive any other way. I know it's a dream, but it's my dream. What I say to young girls that don't like the word, is that what you said?
Yeah, how young women who are down on feminism despite the fact that they enjoy the rights that feminism has fought for.
Well, I'm not going to tell other people how they should think about the things that they think about, and perhaps there are times when the word has been tarnished or tossed around in a negative way. And I'm not demanding that all women proclaim themselves as feminists. I am of a generation where I remember some of the struggle that went on to get equal rights. And some of this stuff, happened within my lifetime where, we didn't have the rights that we have now. So I'm very much aware of how lucky I am to stand where I do today and live the life that I live today. And I know I owe a huge debt to those women that went before me and fought for that right. I think there's probably a whole new group of women coming in that are just born into that right. And in a sense, how great is that? Wasn't that the goal? To have these women not to have to continue to fight for the certain things that they have the privilege of doing today. And hopefully that will just continue. And then, we'll get to a point where just, having equal rights is just the way it is, and we don't have to proclaim ourselves one thing or another anymore. For men that don't like the word, I would think, examine the word and examine what about this word makes you so uncomfortable. What is a trigger with this word that makes you so uncomfortable? I think that's something really worth examining. And again, I'm not going to tell anyone how to think or be in the world, but I really would urge them to examine why that word makes them uncomfortable, and what about women being equal to themselves makes them so uncomfortable. I think that there's something there worth looking at.
Do you think it's an issue with the fact that there is not really a lot of awareness amongst men about the kind of things that women face every day? just the harassment that people, the day-to-day sexual harassment that people that
Yeah, I mean, I think that, unless you live a female experience, it's really hard to see just, all the subtle ways that this can creep up. The subtle ways, the larger ways, what it's like to, we were talking earlier, to travel alone, to do certain things alone without a male companion, and sort of the inherent risk that you face by doing that. The very first time I traveled, I went to UK by myself. I was 19 years old, and and I've traveled a lot ever since, both on my own and with other people. And there's always it's a different experience when I'm in a place on my own and when I'm in a place with my husband or with somebody else. And so on the one hand, I can't expect a male to really fully understand my experience without having lived my experience. But I think that there is far more awareness of that now than there ever was before, because of things like this, because of conversations, because people are talking about it more and demanding for it to be seen, noticed, and dealt with.
Okay. Yeah, and you're right. Hopefully one day it will just be normal. We don't have to talk about.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
Things like that. Okay, let's go to some questions about your writing process. Diana Schofler has one, and she asks, did you think that when you started the first book in the series that it would turn into a series? How do you know where to end the series? And do you think that writing a series is easier than just writing one book? That's 3 questions in one, really.
Good question. So, I have a couple different answers, but I'll go. My first series that I ever wrote was the Immortal series. And when I started Evermore, that book was for myself. I was going through a deep grief of having lost several people in a short time, and then nearly losing my husband as well. And it was my way of working through that grief, finding solace and answering some of the questions that I had for myself. I really wasn't even thinking about selling the book until I finished and thought, well, I've written a book, I may as well try to do something with it. And funnily enough, it ended up being the book that changed, my entire life and career. Because I entered it in that way, no, I wasn't thinking about that becoming a series. I was just trying to get through this book to make myself feel better in a sense. When I reached the end of the book, though, I realized, oh, this isn't really a contained story. This is a much bigger journey, and this is just a launching point. So then I think I was about a third or 2/3 of the way through Blue Moon, the second book in the series, when I knew exactly how it would end and how many books it would take me to get there. Since then, I've written 2 other series, the Riley Bloom series and the Soul Seekers, and because I had a little bit more experience under my belt at that point, I did plot it out from the beginning and sort of, figured exactly how many books it would tell to get to the end of that journey. Is it easier? Yes and no. No, because it's a much bigger scope than you can do, within 300 to 400 pages. You're taking the character on a much, much bigger journey, and it requires a lot of detailing and plotting and really keeping track of all these things that you put in the packet, and everything needs to pay off later. So there's a little more strategy that goes along with that. That said, there's something difficult about writing shorter. What was it, Napoleon and Josephine? Sorry for such a long letter. If I'd had more time, I would have written a shorter one. So there's something to be said about, writing a shorter story, a contained story with the full experience, within the cover, between the covers. But you know what? Nothing about writing is easy, to be honest.
That's true.
Not it is easy. Yeah, we keep going back for more. So.
Yeah, I know. Okay, speaking of things not being easy, Jen Eng has a question, and the question is, what are some of the challenges you have faced when ending the series?
Oh, it's saying goodbye in a sense to the characters. I know that sounds silly, but I mean, with the Immortals, that was 6 books. And so I had this, vision in my head that I was going to throw this enormous party at my desk, the moment I wrote the words "the end." And it was the opposite. It was like holding a weight. You know, I kind of sat very quietly in front of my computer for a really long time because it occurred to me that these people had been these characters. I call them people, but to me they were had become such an entrenched part of my life. I was with them every single day. I spoke to them more than I did my family and friends. They were, always with me, and I was controlling their destinies.
Yeah.
And they were so attached, and I realized, like, this is it. We don't see each other anymore, and they probably never want to see me again. Like, this is where I leave them. And, there's like a little mourning period that went along with that. On a more, technical level, making sure that everything that I had put in the books along the way came to a payoff, and tying up every loose end, and making sure it all sort of congealed into the place where I had originally envisioned that it would. That was an additional challenge.
Okay. Well, great. You said it's difficult to say goodbye to them, but you do. I mean, like Riley Bloom, you used to again. So do you find that happening? Like you can't really say goodbye to this character. There is another story there, and you have to use it. Do you find that happening very often?
Riley Bloom is definitely a case of that. And my publisher had actually come to me and sort of floated this idea of writing a Riley Bloom series, and I jumped at it because I had a really hard time saying goodbye to her in Evermore. Like, I tried to make reasons to keep her around because I liked her so much. And I did. I just really loved writing her. She's one of my favorites to write because she's at that great age at 12 years old. She's so overconfident and just fun, So, yeah, it was fun to be able to revisit her again and bring her back. And then I brought Ever into her series after the Immortals had ended. So I did get to sneak in some visits.
Well, it's always fun to play with all your characters again and put them in different places. I read somewhere that you do a lot of research. Like, how much of your time is taken by research, and do you do it in a big chunk before you start writing, or is it like an ongoing process?
It's both. With the Immortals and with the Soul Seekers, I did a ton at the beginning of the process. I did, for the Immortal series, I underwent several sessions of past life hypnosis.
Wow.
I took psychic development classes with James Von Prague. With the Soul Seekers series, I took a 3-day basic shamanism course, and I did, we journeyed to the lower world and met our spirit animals. I do a lot of hands-on stuff because even though I'm writing about these fantastical worlds, I like them to be as entrenched in reality as possible. And, these are existing concepts. So, I wanted to get what it might be like to be psychic, what it might be like to, be familiar with the past life, things like that. And then as I write, I'm continually, reading books on metaphysics or shamanism or whatever the series might entail. So it goes the entire time, the entire length of the series, research.
So you obviously invest a lot of time and a lot of yourself into them, which leads to Diana Schoffel's other question, which is, have you ever felt like crying when you finished your book?
Oh, I always feel like crying. Sometimes I feel like crying in the middle of a book, but that's another story. Because it's this real sort of cathartic release, It's like you've gone... when you're writing these scenes, it's like I'm Ever Bloom. I'm Barry Santos. I'm these characters going through this journey with them, and I put so much of myself into it that I'm just as exhausted as they are by the time it's over. And I've definitely cried at the end of the book, for sure.
Well, it sounds like a very fun and very emotional journey being a writer.
It is. It is indeed.
Okay, let's see what else. What next question I can ask you? Oh, Diana has another question. She seems very enthusiastic. I'll just ask another question.
I like that.
She says, do you have more fun researching a book than writing the book yourself? That's an interesting question.
Well, in a sense, yes. Because it's kind of playtime, it gives me an excuse to have experiences that, already interest me. I mean, doing the past life regressions was fascinating. Doing the psychic development seminar with James Van Praagh was amazing. And you're just in this sort of open learning experiential place and just taking it all in. So that's always, I always enjoy that. But there is something to be said about, I joke about how hard writing is, and it is hard, and it's always hard. It's not supposed to be easy. And but I really do love getting in there and creating these worlds and creating these characters. And I always end up, learning something about myself. Or I'll enter a book with, a sort of broader question, and the book is sort of a journey to answer that. So I get a lot out of writing these books, and I really do enjoy the process. It's just a little more. The difficulty, I think, lies in I have this image in my head of exactly how I want this book to look and how I want you to see it, and then the job is to translate the picture into words that allow you to see what I see. And I never really fully nail that, but I come as close as I can.
Yeah, I think maybe all writers and maybe even artists feel that you have this vision in your head and it's so vivid, but to put it down on the paper is something else.
That's where the challenge is, yeah.
Have you, has any of your characters, while you're writing them, taught you anything?
No, all the time. I'm trying to think of, something in particular that would come to mind. But, all the time. I mean, I kind of, I get a little bit from each one. I know, like, writing Riley Bloom, and she's 12 years old, and she's so overconfident, and she so overestimates her abilities.
Yeah.
But I came away from her going, if I could take a little piece of Riley Bloom into my everyday life, how great would that be? Because she's just so courageous.
Yeah.
She'll mess up, but she gets right back up and keeps going. And so I found her kind of inspiring, and Ever Bloom, her sister, sort of the strength that she exhibited. Her journey was really learning to trust herself, to listen to herself, because in the end she didn't know. Everyone was telling her what to do all the time, and it may have looked like they knew what to do.
Yeah.
But by the end, she hadn't made a single bad choice. She just had to learn how to tune out everybody else and sort of follow her own vision. And and that is something that I think we all struggle with, is shutting out the noise of the well-meaning people around us sometimes and just doing what we know in our heart needs to be done. And so it was sort of a reminder to do that in my own life as well. So there's always, something that I get from these characters.
Yeah, and that's a very good lesson for the young people reading the books as well, that no matter what happens, you have to be strong enough to get up and go and do it again and try again.
Yeah, I mean, I really, I really think that we sort of have a, I think we sort of give failure a bad rap. And
yeah.
I know that all of the things I've achieved in my life began with failure. Every single thing I achieved in life began with a failure. And so when I look back on those failures, I'm grateful that they happened, and I'm grateful that I kept going. Because had I quit at the point of failure, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now. And so, if we can just look at failure not as something to be ashamed of and to hide and bury so nobody sees, but just as this learning process of, okay, that didn't work, that won't stop me. We just keep going to learn from it. I think if we could reframe how we look at failure, I think we'd be a lot better off.
Yeah, that's a very good lesson. I have a question about your books again. Your books have been translated into a few languages, is that right?
36.
Yeah, a few. Do you think it's important that these kind of the lessons that you can find in your book about being strong and how women can be strong and men should respect women, do you think it's important that they be passed around the world so that everyone has these lessons?
No, absolutely. And we're all, we may speak different languages, come from different cultures, have different belief systems, but we're all going through the same journey. And that's the journey of just being alive and being in the world and, you know, finding our way. And, you know, I've been so lucky that I've been able to travel, I think, to 4 or 5 continents for my books, doing book tours and talking to young people. And I don't see the differences, you know, when I travel. I just see this shared common experience wherever I go. And the things that, you know, the Brazilians are connecting to in my books are the same things that the Americans are connecting to, and the French. And it just shows me how united we all really are. And yeah, these are important messages for anybody because we're all on the same path.
Yeah. From the way you speak, it seems that I wouldn't say feminism, but basically the question of equality between the sexes and putting an end to violence against women seems to be something you're quite passionate about. Can you tell us why that is? Why do you support this cause? And why do you support the Pixel Project?
Well, I mean, I think it's I just think it should be a unquestioned right that every girl is able to grow up in a safe environment and never feel threatened by the people around her. And I'm speaking emotionally and physically because there is, you know, emotional violence as well. I just think it should be a right. And I think that we should strive for that to be a right. Nobody deserves to be, everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Everybody. And I would, you know, really like to see a world where we don't have to have conversations like this anymore, where it just is, but the only way to get there is by continuing this conversation. And, you know, anytime you shine the light on a dark place, that darkness can't grow because now the light is on it, and it just makes a darkness. And conversations like this are shining the light on a darkness that, you know, maybe it's more convenient to turn away from, but we can't. And writing about these issues in books shines a light on this darkness. So it's just part of a continuing conversation. The things that I write about in the books, the things that we're talking about now, the way, you know, I go about and live my life, it's just one long conversation.
Do you think people are getting more receptive of these kinds of issues being highlighted in popular culture? For example, people actually writing about it in their novels, like these things happen. Do you think it's being more, it's not controversial anymore, and which means that people accept that these things happen and that we should do something about it?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's repetition. It's having the conversation over and over again, and it, you know, the repetition of something makes it, you know, being, oh, now we can talk about this. Oh, look, we keep talking about this, and it starts being more and more okay to talk about. It starts being more and more okay to bring up, and, you know, and to put in books for teens, and that's just part of this repetition. And yeah, it's highly appropriate. And, you know, I think that we need to start having this conversation from a very young age to teach our boys that you don't lay your hands on a girl. Not in that way. You know, you respect your sister, you respect your mother, you respect, you know, the females in your life, and to teach, you know, each other to that sort of mutual respect. That's a conversation that should start, you know, at a really young age. And then it's, of course, through media, books, you know, classroom.
Yeah, that's right. Diana has another question for you. I think Diana might just be your biggest fan.
I love it. Hi, Diana.
Okay, so Diana says, have you learned more about yourself, and have you been able to incorporate your learning experience into your future books? Is it sometimes harder to start a book when you anticipate the emotion it will provoke if the emotion is strong enough? Did you get that?
Questions. I think of myself as constantly evolving, and I hope that I never feel like I'm done growing or learning. I'm always in a state of growing and learning and exploring, whether it be myself, my own motivations, my choices, or the world around me. So I actually look forward to those emotional moments in the book that make me sort of have to go deep within myself and either, retrieve something from the past that may have been painful. I pull from my own life all the time for my books. It's almost like method writing. And as I figure if an experience didn't kill me, then I'm supposed to write about it. So I pull from my own life. I pull for those painful experiences, and yeah, I don't mind doing that at all. I kind of look forward to getting into that deep emotional space, because I know that from that space, I can do more healing within myself, and I can create a world that the reading will take away, hopefully, what I was trying to parlay a little better, because I really put that emotional depth.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Quickly this hour. All right. Okay, I'll ask 2 questions. Do you have any tips or advice for young and aspiring authors out there?
Yes. I do. The one you're going to hear it all the time, so I'll be brief. It's just to read a lot, read everything, read books that you like, books that you don't like, books that you think might not interest you. Just read really widely and read analytically. When you really like something, question why you really like it. What worked about it? What was it this author did? And same when you don't. You'll learn just as much from books you don't like. What about this book didn't work for you?
Mm-hmm.
But really what I want to say is if you can learn to turn off the judging critic voice in your head, it's going to really serve you later on. I think the reason why so many people give up the writing dream is because it's really hard to write. It's not easy, and there's no such thing as a first draft. But when you're new to writing, and you've got all these great books that have inspired you, and now you're sitting down before this blank screen, this very intimidating blank screen, and you start putting words on it, the first instinct is to judge the words. And be like, these words don't look like fill in the blank, the name of your favorite author. Without realizing it took that author that you love so much, God knows how many attempts to get her books looking that good. I mean, those aren't first drafts on the shelf,
Yeah.
I revise my books countless times before you guys get to read them. And this critical voice will just stop you dead in your tracks. It's just the death knell of creativity. And so my advice is just to turn it off and just write a really crappy first draft. It's fine. Okay, because nobody's going to read it, because you're not going to show it to anybody. Please don't show it to anybody. It's your opportunity to explore and find the voice and find out who these characters are and figure out why it's so important to tell this story. And then you're going to go back and revise the heck out of it. But you have to let yourself write badly in order to write well. So if you can just turn off that critic voice and just allow yourself to have the space to freely explore and create, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to get a book finished.
Yeah, that's good advice, Alyson. You just need to give yourself a chance and just do it.
Just do it.
Okay, my last question. Do you have a male role model, that someone that you look up to, who is a role model for treating women with respect and just treating everyone like a nice person should?
I have a lot of males in my life that I really admire. My agent is a male, and he has this really nice, gentle way about him, and he's always been, incredibly respectful, and I just really kind of like how he interacts with people. My husband is a role model. His brother, his twin that passed away 10 years ago, was a tremendous role model. I watched him with his children, and he had a daughter and a son who I'm extremely close to. I think of them as my children, and they were 9 and 10 when he passed, and he had the most beautiful relationship with them and the most beautiful relationship with his daughter. And I really admired, because I didn't have the best relationship with my father, and so I really admired this bond that he built with her and how she felt, in his presence, so empowered just to be who she was and so just happy in her own skin. It was just this beautiful thing to see. And so, you know, I carry that with me.
That's great. I think all fathers should be that kind of role model. Let their children, boys and girls, just be whoever they are, and you know, teach them people.
For sure.
Well, I think that brings us nicely to the end of the session. We have 5 minutes left. That's great. We did well, didn't we, Alyson?
It was fun. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
It went really quickly. It's all good things do. Okay. Before we sign off, I promised to tell everybody about the awesome goodies that we have. Alyson herself has very generously donated a 30-minute one-to-one Skype chat with a lucky fan. So you can chat with Alyson about her books, ask her for advice perhaps, or just hang out for 30 minutes on Skype. That is a great prize, Alyson. Thank you so much for donating that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it for a reader, a book club, a classroom, whoever wants 30 minutes to talk about writing, books, whatever. I'm in.
That's so great. I'm sure I hope there will be lots of people fighting for that one. That will be a good auction. Okay, let me give you guys a bit of information on how you can win that amazing prize. And here it is. Yes, here it is. Okay. So all you have to do is to donate as little or as much as you want. You can go to Indiegogo. The page is R4P Indiegogo and donate, and you could win this awesome 30-minute Skype chat with Alyson. If you don't have a credit card or you prefer using PayPal and you love Drabbles, you can donate at R4P Razoo, where you can get a pack of exclusive 100-word short stories from lots of authors like Guy Gabriel Kay, Kevin Hearn, Delilah S. Dawson. And yeah, so please donate. Here we are, we're back again. Okay. Once again, if you want to find out more about violence against women and what you can do to stop it, go to reveal.thepixelproject.net. You can also read more about the Read for Pixels project. And please donate and help us raise the $1 million for our cause. So I guess that's it. All that remains for me to say is thank you so much, Alyson, for being here with us. We had a great time. And thank you to our audience for asking so many awesome questions, especially Diana, who did most of the asking. And I'll say good night, or good morning, or good day to you wherever you are. Thank you.